Hey guys, so I got a question for you. Would you rather be right or would you rather win an argument? They're not always the same. In fact, a lot of times they're not. There was a situation that arose recently where an individual that I know, that whole family was kind of very left leaning and so on and so forth. They they were Biden supporters and stuff like that. They knew that I wasn't, and we all got along. I mean, it's not like we didn't talk politics together. We had conversations, and honestly, some of their viewpoints um, opened my mind up to some things that, you know what, I mean, these are genuinely caring people. They do care for others, and I began to kind of see that a lot of the people who are maybe heavy on the gray side have a tendency to be more left leaning. A lot of the people who are heavy on the truth side have a tendency to be more right leaning. So the two of us together kind of had some interesting conversations and stuff, and it was fine. I didn't change their mind, they didn't change mine. But one of the things that came up was a joke recently. It was a meme that came up, and it said something about, you know, uh, how all the Biden supporters, are still in the cemetery or something like that, talking about how the election was rigged or something. Anyway, and I made some sarcastic remark that, on the post that this individual was at least one person who, in fact, did vote for Biden. And that started a whole uproar, and everyone got all kinds of upset and stuff like that. And here's the point. If you're in a situation where you feel like you morally made the right decision, you were left leaning in your views, and I voted for Biden, and so on and so forth, then my question is, why would it be offensive for you to be mentioned in relationship to having voted for him? Why would that be something that would be offensive or bothersome? If in fact those are your views and he happens to be perpetuating your views in the way that you wanted him to, then why would you be offended? By the same token, if you made a mistake and it was like, I voted for Biden not because I liked him, but because I didn't like Trump, and now the world is in chaos and I'm regretting my decision, then why would you not want to be corrected on that? Why would you not want to own up to that and be like, you know what, you're right, my bad. Like, I completely got led by my emotions against Trump, and I voted for Biden, and now I'm reaping the consequences of my decisions. The point being is that none of us like to be corrected. There is just something in us that we don't like to be told that we're wrong about anything. But there is something that is good and healthy, because by being corrected, it allows us to be put on a path where we can continue on believing in something that is true and is accurate and is factual. To go on believing in something that is an utter lie just so that you can maintain some sort of feelings of moral superiority or self-righteousness or something like that, is actually harmful. It's dangerous. And it talks about this in the book of First John, and in particular in the first chapter. John is talking about walking in light and walking in darkness, and it talks about that when we say that we have fellowship with God, but we walk in darkness, that we're lying, that we're not telling the truth. We don't actually have fellowship with God. And the next verse after that talks about if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us. A lot of times commentators will fixate on the walking part. Well, he's talking about, walking, like a continuous period of life of walking in willful sin and stuff like that. And if we're going on sinning willfully, and that may be the case. But I think based on the context of the verse, what he's referring to What the emphasis of that passage is referring to is the difference between light and darkness. Light, Jesus talked about, exposes our sin. And it talks about that those that don't like to have their sin exposed, they have a tendency to respond, well, they hate the light, is what Jesus said. By the same token, darkness is something that we see throughout the Gospels, talked about, where blindness occurs, and it talked about how the Pharisees were blind to their own sins and so on and so forth. So John continues this whole analogy that light is something that is good. It is something that where truth comes in and it exposes areas of your life. And if you're walking in this truth, if you're walking in this fully open, you know what? I made a mistake. My bad. That's how confession works. Okay. If you're walking in something where it's like, no, and you're just deceiving yourself and you're just justifying, well, that's the darkness. That's the blindness that occurs where we go on and continue to walk in that pattern of life. And eventually we don't have that conviction anymore. We don't have that, that sense of correction anymore. And that's a dangerous place to be. In fact, Paul talks about having our consciences seared. And basically searing is talking about, how you brand an animal. And you take a hot iron and you brand an animal. And eventually what happens is the searing that occurs on the flesh, it deadens the nerves so that it can't feel anything anymore. For a Christian, that's probably the most heinous thing that could ever possibly occur. That is the worst. It is our biggest fear, is to reach that point where God is correcting us and we are no longer able to feel it. We're no longer able to sense it. We can no longer hear his voice because we have literally pushed aside his correction so many times and ignored it and justified it and rationalized it. And each time we do that, it gets a little bit less, and a little bit less, to the point where eventually we just don't even feel it anymore. And that's a scary place to be. It's a scary place to be when you are right in every argument all the time and you can't be corrected. I had a friend one time where he and I had two different views on a particular situation, and it kind of started to drive a wedge between us. But it wasn't something that was so clear cut that it was like, well, scripturally he's wrong. I mean, I had my views, and I was like, yeah, I think you're wrong here. And he had his views, and he was like, scripturally, I think you're wrong here. And ultimately what ended up happening is we both just prayed that, you know what? I pray that if I'm wrong, that God will show me, and that if you're wrong, that God will show you. But the overarching goal for both of us as Christians was to be corrected by God, was to be right. And not right in the sense of winning an argument, but to be right with God, to be walking in light, to not go on deceiving ourselves in some sort of willful rebellion, but to be walking in truth. Because I don't care how emotionally connected you are to a lie, it's still a lie. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. I wanted you guys to maybe think about that. Think about that in context to not just things with politics, but other things as well. I shared a meme today or whatever. It was just kind of a funny meme, but it was one of those things where, it's got this kid with this ridiculous look on his face, just this smug look. And, and it's like the look on my face when all these people see that I was right after they called me crazy. And there is a certain amount of kind of smugness, to that. But by the same token, it's also an opportunity for people to realize that when we see these things going on in the world, don't get fixated on, well, I had a embittered argument with this individual and I am not going to give them the satisfaction of being right. That's you walking in darkness. Instead, maybe stop for a second. Don't be so emotionally attached to the discussion, and instead realize that, you know what, they were actually right on this. Where were they getting that from? Where was that line of thought going? What because they were right, what does that mean down the road, and how does that affect me, and how can I go about correcting my actions, and so on and so forth. We're all ignorant. I heard this from an old train head like a long time ago. We're all ignorant, just about different stuff at different times. If you think that you've got all the answers, you're the one who's walking in darkness. You're the one who is ignorant. We want to be open-minded and hear each other's argumentation, but ultimately we want to stand hard and fast for truth and not be attached to a lie, and not go on rationalizing and justifying our own positions because of some sort of pride or self-righteousness or anything like that that allows us to kind of hold on to something that is just simply not true. So anyway, I want to share that with you guys. Hope you guys are doing well today. God bless.